Good evening and welcome to episode 292 of the Private Property Podcast. I'm your host, Uzamantungwa Khumalo. It's a Tuesday edition of the Private Property Podcast. If you're joining us for the first time, you have missed out on nearly 300 episodes of great property content. So do make sure that you go to our Facebook or our YouTube page to catch up on all things relating to property. And to all our regular viewers, you know how we do it every single weekday. You and I have an appointment where we're always in conversation with experts who help us navigate our property journey. Doesn't matter whether you're looking to buy, to sell, to build, whether you're still renting or looking to rent out your property. This certainly is the only daily property talk show in South Africa that helps you navigate your property journey. And talking about helping you navigate your property journey, we also have a whole host of other shows that you can plug into that helps you along your journey. As it is a Tuesday, you can catch award-winning farmer Umbali Nwoko this evening on the Farming Podcast. I know she's going to be talking about poultry farming. I think this is one of those very hot topics. And if you certainly have an interest on it, do make sure that you tune in at 8 p.m. You can also catch the Farming Podcast every Thursday in the same time slot. And every Mondays and Friday, Chad takes you through exclusive properties that you can find on www.privateproperty.co.za, where he really gives us a great sense of what we can expect and some amazing properties that you can find on the Private Property website. And Esty Claassen takes you through the first-time home buyers show, where she's always in conversation with people who've not only walked that first-time home buying journey, but have gone on to grow their property portfolio from strength to strength. Those are some of the great shows that you can look forward to every single weekday at 8 p.m. And of course, as we love making the property circle bigger, do share this live as you are watching us so that your friends and family on Facebook or even on YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube or on Instagram, can see that you are joined in. Now, this evening, we're talking about a topic I absolutely love, because if one of the, I know a lot of sayings, tend to say that if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with people. We know that no man is an island. So it's really understanding the power of community, the power of networks in order for you to get to where you want to go, and certainly as efficiently as possible. And we're looking at building a property investment network. So if you don't even know what that is, well, we're going to explore it, the benefits of it, from looking at the slightly more informal networks to those that are already there, they're structured, even mentorship programs that you're able to plug into, the value of some of these programs, what you can look forward to if you want to go down that route, and even explore why go down that route, right? Perhaps you think, look, I can get all the information and the help that I'll need from watching the podcast, going to the website. I don't need to be part of any kind of formal or even informal structure. Why do I need to be part of anything like that? You're going to get a sense of the value that certainly opens up and what you can get if you walk down that route. And we've got a guest. I know her because she's interviewed me. And I know that if you're a follower, of course, of the great shows that we have here on Private Property, you would have also seen her on Este's show. show. And this is Miranda Moloto, who's a property mentor at PropDocMom. Miranda, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi there, good evening, Zama. The tables are turned.
I know, right? The tables are turned. Just for the benefit of some of the viewers who perhaps didn't catch you on the First Time Home Buyer Show with Esty Clarkson, briefly, I think share with us briefly your own property investment journey, and we'll talk a bit later about PropDocMom and some of the
Absolutely
in the mentorship program, because that fits so beautifully into what we're talking about today. But I think briefly just share with our viewers at home your own property investment journey and how we get to now learn from you.
For me, I love saying all my mentees are learning from all the school fees that I paid, because my property journey started with a wobble. Oh, well, not really. It started with the old adage that we are given. You get to school, you graduate, you buy a house, you get into a mortgage, and you are going to be in there for a long haul. So I had bought homes two times before I got divorced, and then bought my home again. And I was happily sauntering along with my mortgage until I got to property investing as an asset class. And I ended up buying an apartment that was not cash flowing, and it wasn't going to cash flow for 3-4 years. And even in the 4th year, it was going to cash flow something like 230, some ridiculous little amount like that. And that's when I caught a wake up to say, well, real estate investing, if you are investing, you need to be making money, right? So investing must look like that. A real estate business needs to be making money. And that's how I discovered the strategy of buying multi-let properties. Multi-let properties meaning I have got multiple tenants in the same building, and I get the benefit of multiple rentals. And when one tenant or two tenants move, I still have enough money to pay the mortgage, and I still have money remaining in the pocket. So that's how it's gone. And I've bought with partners, I've bought on my own. I have also invested money in property stokvels, and I have lent money as a hard money lender to flippers twice, and with good returns, 15, 17%, 22% at some stage. The very first time I lent to a flipper, I got 22%. That's how the property bug beat me. I knew there was something in there. Yeah.
And Miranda, I actually love that you mentioned that the property bug bit you, because it really is one of those things that, especially once you start getting it right, as opposed to when you kind of do get in jail, you're just like, oh, I have a property, and you're not as deliberate and you're not running it like a business. It's great from the outside, but when you actually sit down and run your numbers, you realize, no, this thing is actually, draining money from me. But the moment you're able to get to the point where it starts making you money and you start understanding how to make money, but also start understanding that there are different ways to make money from property, that it isn't only about you buying the property yourself or even buying a loan. And we'll get to that, just in a bit, Miranda. I want us to look at, when you look at our conversation this evening around property investment networks, maybe let's start at the top around what exactly do we mean when we talk about, property investment networks, because I know that different viewers at home can have their own perception about this. But when we talk about it, especially in the context of somebody being an active property investor, what do we mean by property investment networks?
Well, there are so many ways of looking at property networks. And I tell everyone that I'm a nerd. So I start things with an academic mind. Where do I go? What do I read? What needs to be read, and whatever. And it helped the fact that when I started in property, I started with academics. So I started in a master class. I didn't attend 1 or 2 or 3, but I attended 6 master classes. So I would keep going on a weekend, and I wanted this knowledge to distill, and I just couldn't get what they are talking about. Where's this money made again? So I would attend another master class and I would try. So in the master classes, inadvertently, by the time you leave that weekend, we had the benefit of doing a person-to-person, face-to-face master classes from a Friday night to a Sunday afternoon or a whole Saturday or something like that. So inadvertently, by the time you leave on that day, there are people on your level who know as little or as much as you know. You already know some people who you can choose as a mentor. You already have got certain people that you exchange numbers with. So informal networks start that way, right? But I was lucky enough to bump against South African Property Investors Network, SAPIN, and I paid a membership because I'm like that. Before I embark on something, I go and find out that, you don't have to do it the way I do it. I'm terrible with information. I gobble everything that's written down. So the reason why I joined a formalized network is that every Thursday evening, I knew there was something going on at SAPIN. And there's lots of education, there's lots of deals that are shared, and there are all sorts of service providers in terms of property, meaning your conveyancer is there, your bond originator is there, your finance houses are there, and then some property investors will share their journey or something like that. So there are various ways, pockets of how a network is formed. But also, I happen to find podcasts that were non-South African. Well, I didn't know about private property podcasts at the time. And they were all outside of our country. They were all US-based and UK-based. And for me, that was my network because they've got Facebook pages. And the kind of questions that participants ask is the kind of questions that I was sitting with. They would use different language. Oh, you must register an LLC. An LLC is like a PTY limited company in South Africa. And they would talk about, they would use whatever terminology. You've got your 401k and you borrow from it. That's your pension fund. So I've been exposed to networks way beyond the South African networks. And I find that even the question that you didn't think of asking, someone in the network will ask. You get the benefit of someone who's gone through a rough patch of something, and you learn to know that there is something like that. In the US, everyone would speak about you buy a triplex and a duplex. And I was like, I wonder if there's a duplex in South Africa, right? I had never seen a duplex until I came Taffontein and Rosettenville. Actually, there are fourplexes and duplexes and triplexes, and so a network is whatever you call it, right? Your Facebook network is a network. A formalized network like the one I'm talking about, where I paid a premium membership so that I can get my education, is a network. A masterclass is a network, right? I host meetups monthly, discussing different aspects of property investing. Right now, I'm doing something about passive investment as a professional. And the meetup session, by virtue of being in that meetup session, you meet other people who ask the questions that you might link up and end up investing together and stuff. So a network is really many, many, many things, right?
And Miranda, we're going to be taking your questions and comments at home as we're exploring building a property investment network. And I want to find out from you at home how you have invested in your own network when it comes to your property journey, and perhaps even share some of the milestones that you've been able to reach by virtue of your network. Because one of the great things about being part of networks, whether it is slightly informal or even more formalized, is that you're able to also check in with each other and say, the last time I was struggling with maybe raising capital for this particular deal, now I'm actually able to successfully do so. And, the property has been registered, it's, 80% occupied. And now we're looking at just managing it better and adding the next property onto the portfolio. I certainly want to hear from you about that, especially because I think now more than ever, many of us are realizing that networks do come in different shapes and sizes. And as Miranda has pointed out, you can go the route of joining a formal network, paying a premium membership, but there are also different ways to, still be part of a network and still cultivate the relationships in that network, because I think that's actually also another important thing, Miranda, that I want us to it's one thing to be a member of a network. That doesn't automatically mean anything for the most part. There's also an aspect of how do you then cultivate some of those relationships so that in the event where you want to approach a Miranda for a particular deal, whether to go in with you in financing that particular deal, I would be awkward. Okay,
I know.
I know we attend the same things, but I don't actually know you like that, So perhaps just give us a few tips on that when it comes to also just building those relations, because it's not an automatic thing. We can go to the same meetings, we can watch the show, we can even all comment down here below. It doesn't necessarily mean that when I need to raise capital for a particular deal, I can just knock on your door for that particular capital.
That is such an important thing. I on our podcast on Property Magicians, I keep repeating the sentence that property is a relationship business long before you take out the money. And the first thing that I speak to mentees about is integrity, right? One is, even when you don't remember someone's name, if you've taken their number and you've seen them, do say hello. That is like, it's simple etiquette, but you have to remind some people that you do say hello when you bump into them. One. The second thing is, how did I manage to borrow someone 50,000 that I didn't know, and he gave me 50,000 plus 22% interest back in the 5 months that he said he would pay it back? It's because we are in a network. The network forms some sort of a safety net, because then somebody knows the person and knows the property that they are flipping, and you will get your money back. Number two, sign agreements when you are borrowing each other money, guys. Let's not do, our own Yamazi. I know Zama, I've seen her on TV and whatever. It can go pear-shaped very quickly, and it ruins relationships. But the second thing is, when you've borrowed someone's money, get back to them when that date arrives and you are not ready to pay up, right? Integrity is extremely important. So to maintain relationships, you've got to have integrity. I know in intimate relationships, some people are quite fine with laissez-faire. There are other entrants into the relationship. In the property business, there's big monies that are exchanged between two people or different groups of people. So integrity is important. And how we keep the integrity is by making sure that signed agreements happen. Let me put it in there as well, that even between sisters and brothers can we sign agreements, because there's nothing that ruins relationships like money.
I think we underestimate, Miranda, one of the stats that always is top of mind for me is more marriages end because of financial issues than because of infidelity. So marriages survive infidelity more than they survive, financial turmoil or financial issues. And so when you think of it from that perspective, you realize just how important it is to be very transparent about money issues in any kind of relationship, and to draw boundaries around money in any kind of relationship. And of course, then in the context of this, you want to put contracts in place, because just because Uzama Umbona, on your screens doesn't necessarily mean that when
money.
And it really doesn't. And I like that point that you raised, because oftentimes we go with that, no man, but also Uzama introduced me to this person, therefore automatically, Kanti, even I don't know how Miranda is like with money, in as much as I may have introduced you, together. I've never had a conversation with her about money. So understanding those fundamentals becomes so important.
Very important. Let me just put in one other thing there that is so critical, that Vanille hears me talk about it all the time. Let's talk about Mimasehes and the folks and the family house. Is that not the source of discord in Black families? I don't know about other nations, but I think it is one of my pain points, because we do not sign agreements, because our parents don't leave a will. because those houses are not registered properly in a will and in a trust, and it says Miranda shall take care of the house until number 3 becomes older and whatever. Because those things are not written down, it ruins relationships. And while we step on eggshells and not wanting to offend who, call it by name. Your 2 properties, Zama, you are writing them against somebody's name, and do that, finish and clear, so that when you die, there's no dispute about it. I don't know about you guys in your families, but I think the source of great discomfort with me is where families do not register properly what they mean about ngiphile lendlu, ngishiyele bani. It's just, it doesn't work. And it's not working for our nations. And that's why we've got shows like Ilifalami and I don't know what it's called. I don't watch TV.
You know, Miranda, that's actually a very different can of worms that I think we should probably explore one day, because one of the other unfortunate things is because so many family homes, as Katinesni, aren't properly registered, it also means that you can't actually use them as an asset, as a family. There aren't different ways that you can leverage it as an asset, because for the most part, it's a paid off asset, right? Like there isn't any debt on that particular asset. So, for the most part, we also don't look at it as an asset. And so there definitely are very different and creative ways that the house can be used as a tool for the family, even when parents are still alive, particularly when parents are still alive, when everything is still fine and you don't have to wait for, conflict and grief and everything else in the mix. But I want us to go to your questions and comments at home as I'm in conversation with Miranda Moloto, who is a property mentor at PropDocMom, as we're looking at building a property investment network, some of the do's and don'ts, and even great tips on how you can probably get a great edge on your property portfolio. We've got an Instagram comment here coming from Papa Biz, who says, without a signed agreement, we are doomed for conflict. Tepo Link Group also on Instagram saying that agreements always work. And that's the importance of putting those agreements in place, especially if you're going to be lending people money for a flipping, for example, a property, or where money is generally concerned. And a comment here on Facebook from Unonko Simbombo saying, from a young age, property has been my desire. Thank you for these broadcasts. I really need more info on how to go about it. Well, Nonkosi, do continue watching. And I think one of the great things, you're able to go to some of the past episodes where we really do break down different aspects of how you can get your foot into the property ladder. So identify where you are, and you'll definitely be able to find a podcast that will meet you there. We've got a great question coming through from Facebook from Udanyane Ramano asking, what are the advantages of buying an investment property cash? And I love this question because different coaches have a different response about buying properties cash. What's your take, Miranda?
Oh my gosh. I'd love to have your cash, Danyani. My God. When we see
that's a great starting point for a response, right? Because you're probably thinking, if a property is 3M and you have 3M in cash, I would love, that's a good problem to have.
That's it. I was talking to a mentee just this afternoon. So let's say you have got R1 million. This is where I start when I want to show you how you can buy cash. Let's say you don't have a pay slip and you do not have another source of income. So you want to own this asset very quickly. You can own it and maybe you will refinance later. Sure, you can do that. But if you are sitting with R1 million, you know that with R1 million, you can divide it up into 300,000 and buy an asset for 1.3. Instantly, you've got a portfolio of 3 million. You deposit at 100,000. You pay your transfer costs. You own that building, and the rentals from the multi-let starts paying you, and you are paying the bank. You own it. Next, another one, 1 million rent, 200,000 down. And there you are, you own the building, you start collecting rents of 50,000, 52,000, and you have a portfolio of 3 million. So would I buy it for cash? Not right now. I'm in a growth state. So all of us are at different times or at different stages of investing. And the danger of asking a question like that on a platform like this, I give you an answer for 30 seconds, which speaks to me, right? Me, I'm in a growth state. What does it mean? I want expansion of my portfolio. So with that amount of cash, I would divide it up. Even with 600,000, I would buy properties of 800,000 and divide it into three and own different. And also you are risk managing, actually.
Yeah.
You've bought one in Kempton Park, you've bought one in Rosettenville, you've bought one in Primrose in Germiston. So those mixes of tenants are different. In Kempton Park, maybe they are better payers than in Rosettenville or something like that. So would I buy it? Would I buy one property for cash? I wouldn't, right? But, there are different ways of doing this.
I like that. Yeah, and I like that necessarily a wrong way to go about it.
No.
As you've highlighted, it also does depend on what your set of circumstances are, where you are on your investment journey holistically. It also highlights the risk of putting down all that cash in one asset. Into one asset, regardless of what the amount is. I mean, the example you've made is 1M. When you realize how much time it actually takes to make R1 million for an average person, because we'll also just assume, let's say you have a relatively average, job, so you're not involved in any sinister activity, then you also know how long it took you to make that 1 million. And if, for example, it's inheritance money, you can also think, okay, how long did it take the person who's given me this inheritance to make this 1 million? Am I looking to spend all of it on one asset where I might lose a certain percentage of it if this asset, goes pear-shaped? So it's also about just unpacking it for yourself, unpacking the potential risk and also the potential returns. Going back to more of your questions and comments at home, we've got a comment coming through from Umenzi Butelezi on Facebook saying, I have a friend who made his own statements and he enforced his own late payments and he eventually paid the money that I borrowed him in full. We had a great earlier question on Facebook from Utapelo Mukau, who asked, is it a good idea to divide my seating room into 2 bedrooms with my own bath, as my strategy is also multi-lets? Is it not going to reduce my property value having too many bedrooms? I think the broader thing with that question is navigating turning your home into a multi-let. I think that's actually the crux of that question.
Well, there's no one right or wrong answer. There are areas that can take a property like that, right? You go to Bellevue, you go to City Center, you go to Jeppes there are 5-bedroom houses that have been turned into 7 bedrooms. And then they start renting out as rooms, as individual rooms for 1,900 or so, or something like that. So, what I say to my mentees, because I've got a broad range of mentees. I've got doctors, and then I have got your proper lower end of a mentee. House hacking, which is what you are wanting to do, that's a strategy. It is a strategy of raising money, right? You are trying to maximize the property you are sitting in. You do not have another 100,000 to go and buy another property. Why not? You can house hack for a certain number of years and then ultimately move from that property. As to whether it's going to reduce the value of your house, obviously, when you've subdivided like that, it's not a planned thing. It's not a municipality regulated thing that you are doing. So be aware of that. You may have to cut down that structure at some stage so that you take it back to its original form before you sell it, right? If you intend to sell, or you can decide you keep it. I mean, people in Soweto and Katlehong, they keep those houses. It's a consistent total cash cow. Nobody comes and questions. Inner walls are not questioned by municipality because you didn't change anything externally. You are not building on any of the servitude. So there's no, again, you are on this podcast. Our time is this short. I'm answering you from where I am starting with you, just so that you have some sort of an answer. Don't take it as gospel.
Yeah. And you know, when you talk about house hacking, Miranda, I think one of the big things with house hacking, as you're even mentioning it, it always makes me think about how it's also important that who you're partnered with is on the same, is in agreement with you about the investment journey, especially if you intend on living in the property while you're hacking it, as opposed to, you're doing it, other people are going to be, living there. You'll subdivide. You're living wherever you're living. So it really is about both parties must be on the same,
On the same page.
And I want to squeeze in this question. This one is another one from Unonko Simbombo. I'm squeezing it in because I know a lot of people tend to like asking this question. Between buying a flat or land, which idea is a great idea? I know you're going to have to give an abridged response because, like you're saying, there's no right or wrong answer. I could do a whole 30-minute masterclass. I can literally do a masterclass because I've run the numbers on both. So, and especially as I'm looking at different land options right now, so I have my own experience I can share about which path you should be going down, or how to go about considering. I think not even about which path you should go, but how you should
navigate it. Well, let me answer in short and say, let's take a flat, because we are giving you a quick answer. You take a flat, you've bought it for 200,000, and then you've got a tenant that's paying you 4,000 rands, but the rate, the levies from the homeowners association are 2,000 bucks, and then you still have to pay City of Johannesburg 1,400. You are left with 500 out of that rental, right? So sectional titles are great when you are buying for appreciation, but as well, be aware of the many costs. They can leave you out of pocket. You end up, if you end up with no tenant for the month, you still have the bond, the levy, the city that you live in, City of Tshwane, wherever you are, that needs to be paid, and you end up paying it from your pocket. That's the one thing. Piece of land is a little difficult. If today Zama and I decide to go into partnership, we buy piece of land, but Zama has got 1 million rand we are developing in the next 3 weeks, I would buy a piece of land. But most people buy a piece of land and it sits there. You don't have money for development. What you are not aware of is that piece of land has been declared a township already. It's got servitudes from the municipality. You start paying the city. You still have to pay the rates and taxes on an empty piece of land. You're not even sure when you're going to have money to develop. What are you going to develop? You're still going to pay an architect, a quantity surveyor. You probably have to rezone, which is going to cost you another 40,000, and then the contractor to build. So it's a long-term game when it comes to land. Have a plan of when the development is going to happen. Otherwise, it can cost you. I know people who have lost pieces of land because they owned 600,000. They owed 600,000 to the city. They couldn't pay the levies because a piece of land doesn't cash flow today. Piece of land cash flows.
And I think one of the unfortunate thing, Miranda, about a piece of land is people also don't realize how much rates and taxes are going to be. The bigger you want a bigger piece of land, it's more rates and taxes, right? And I think when you start looking at how much the rates and taxes are going to be, and let's say you just thought, I just want this for my dream home, but monthly rates and taxes are 4,000 rands. You haven't even opened Impompi, but it's 4,000 rands.
4,000 rands.
And then you realize that, okay, this is actually a lot. Then you factor in all these other things. I know that we're slowly running out of time. We actually have run out of time, but the one thing that I want to ask you is around the mentorship program at PropDocMom. I did say earlier on in our conversation that I wanted us to talk about it, share with our viewers, the offering and how they'll be able to get in touch with you, because we've shared your details down here below. But for those who are watching, how does the mentorship program look like, and especially if they want to reach out to you to be a member of the program?
Yeah, absolutely. PropDocMom is my mentorship that was established in 2019. And it is particularly for beginners only, right? So what does that mean? The very questions that people are asking, should I buy a piece of land or should I buy a flat? It's the things that we deal with in the beginners program. It's a 16-week program where I take you through structuring your real estate business, choosing the strategy that you are buying in. Because if Zama is buying student accommodation, Miranda is buying multi-lets, Lindile is doing property stockfell. There are 15 strategies of property investing. You can't do all 15. And when you are a beginner, I tailor make it to where you are at. I saw a question where someone says they don't have money. There's nothing like you don't have money. We can have money and you can start participating in property investing. And that's where I start with them. In structuring, we do property management, and then I help you to deal with where are the deals found? Where do we find these properties that we buy? And then to deal analyze. How do I know I'm buying a good deal? The very question of the flat versus a piece of land. We do a deal analysis. You see zero cash flow on the land. You see some cash flow on the flat, some cash flow on a multi-let. Which one are you going to buy? We do deal analysis. We do the big why. Why do you even want to get into property investment? Pela, sometimes it can be fashionable. Uzama says it works. She even has got a podcast, 292. Miranda says it works. She has got Property Magicians podcast. And then you all want to do property investment, but it's not for everyone. And it's not going to follow the same route as mine or Zama's or whoever else is doing.
And there are also easier ways to make money, right?
There are
easier ways to make money. Like, there are easier ways than property to make money. I can look. Sometimes I wish somebody told me that earlier, but here we are. So there are different ways and different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you've got these multiple properties, everyone wants to be you. You've got 200 units under your name, but how do you property manage? Because now you've got 200 tenants to manage. So how do you property manage? And then where do you find the money? We all know the big 4 banks, or 5 now with Capitec, right? We know the banks, but there are 8 other mechanisms of financing a property. Did you know that? So we navigate you through that and to show you all different mechanisms of that. And in the PropDocMom mentorship, what's nice is we've got a private group, the PropDocMom classroom, where monthly I do a class on whether we repeat a deal analysis. We do practical examples of what other mentees are dealing with. We share deals. We share my meetup recordings where these ones are paid up meetups. So my mentees get a lot of free stuff that they don't have to pay for because they've already paid for the mentorship. And with the mentorship comes the benefit of knowing which podcast episode from the Property Magicians to listen to, because really our podcast is an educative step-by-step, just like what you are listening to right now. It's just a longer podcast, much longer, because we want to unpack every little thing. Go and listen to Zama. Zama was one of our guests and very generous in giving the information to our listeners, and cognizant of the fact that brown people particularly were excluded from owning land and owning property, and all the language that was used to hide the money in property, your leverage, capital, and you get lost in this equity leverage English. It's easy, guys. You know a 2-room and a garage, ain't it? You just collect rent from a 2-room and a garage. Yeah.
And I think that's actually just such a great place to leave it at, Miranda, that we have the means to navigate property. In many ways we've been doing it. We haven't been using the terminology. We understand some of the mechanics at we'll call it a basic level. Now you're looking at bringing in financial institutions, doing a cash flow statement, understanding your finances, being able to make a financial case to a financial institution. I always have to be on top of my own balance sheet when I want to, add a property, because I have to make a case to a financial institution that this is how I want to add this particular property. These are the numbers that I've run, and they'll run it through the credit team, and then we're able to, get the deal. So it really is just about learning how do you do that part. But for the most part, when you understand the fundamentals, By the time you even bring that deal, more often than not, a bank is also just impressed that you go through the trouble of, this is actually the deal analysis that I've done. This is how this property is going to make its own money. Miranda,
let me just add one thing about the network. One other positive thing of being in that mentorship is that you get introduced to what we call the power team, another part of your network. What Zama is talking about balance sheet. Some people, when you say balance sheet, they go blank. They don't want to hear it, and then they stop investing in property. How you appoint a property savvy accountant, because not all accountants are the same. A one that is savvy in property will save you money, will make sure your portfolio grows, and will make sure that you are clever in the way you pay tax, not avoiding tax. You defer tax in a certain way so that you can grow your portfolio. The conveyancer that you use, how to use a bond originator and really get and squeeze the bond originator well. That's your network, right? The agent that I find deals from is not the agent that Zama finds deals from, but they are part of your network. And that's another part of your formal network that we call a power team. That's the benefit of being in a mentorship, because then you get introduced very quickly. One mentee was looking for a contractor. All four of us sent her 4 names of contractors. They are true, they are tested, they are reasonable, and they turn up. Relationships are formed. So there you are. That's your community.
And that's definitely that. I think that's a great note to leave this evening's conversation at, Miranda. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely be inviting you back on the show. It has been such a great pleasure to have you on.
It is. Thank you.
And that is Miranda Moloto, who is a property mentor at PropDocMom. If you want to reach out to her, we have shared her contact details down here below. So do make sure that you reach out to her there. And that brings us to the end of the Tuesday edition of the Private Property Podcast with myself, Uzamanto Khumalo. It has been a pleasure to be with you. It is a Tuesday, so you can look forward to award-winning farmer Umbali Nwako bringing you the Farming Podcast. Until then, hoping you're staying home and staying safe.
Thank you.